in just 2 hours. We are following these major developing stories and many more, all coming in right here to CNN News Central. Just finished questioning the tech chiefs behind some of the world's most advanced artificial intelligence products. OpenAI owns the chatbot called ChatGPT. You're probably familiar with it. IBM runs the question answering machine Watson. This technology could fundamentally improve, or it could undermine our elections, our national security, jobs, just to name a few areas. CNN's Donnie O'Sullivan is following developments from this hearing. Donnie, what's the big takeaway here?
Yeah, Brianna, I mean, I think you said it there. Really, the questions voice, they took an AI model, had it listen to some of his speeches on the floor of the Senate, and were able to produce that. And not only were the remarks that you heard produced using an AI voice, what he actually said in that part of to condone, Russia invading Ukraine, etc., how easily that can be used in a disinformation campaign.
Yeah, it is not hard to imagine when you see it there in real life. Donnie O'Sullivan, thank you for that report. Jim, 2 hours, round 2. President Biden and House Speaker McCarthy will meet once again to try to avert a potential economic catastrophe. And if you listen to McCarthy, the prospects aren't looking any better this time around. One sticking point that remains: work requirements for social safety net programs. CNN's Jeremy Diamond is at the White House for us. Any hope for progress at this meeting, Jeremy?
Well, listen, Brianna, when President Biden, and so over the last several days, that is what we have been having. White House aides, congressional negotiators going in, and those congressional negotiators didn't go great. You know, all you really had was both sides reiterating the public pressure. The White House is trying to continue to build that up. We saw a memo from the Office of Management and Budget, the director, Shalonda Young, talking about the fact that these cuts that Republicans are calling for, which is, again, a familiar refrain that we have heard from the president. And ultimately, they do hope that they can make
element to this pressure here. Jeremy Diamond at the White House, thank you so much. Jim?
Well, speaking
Governor
of
Ron DeSantis signing a bill that defunds diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at all of the Sunshine State's public universities. He says the programs distract from the core mission. We're going to show you what is going on there. And panicked 911 calls from the Texas mall shooting have just been released. Hear what it was like as the nation's second deadliest mass shooting this year unfolded. And it defunds diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at all public colleges in the state. The new law says general education courses at Florida state schools can't, quote, distort significant historical events or include a curriculum that teaches identity politics or critical race theory. CNN's Steve Contorno is joining us now on this story. So, Steve, he actually signed this at a public college that has abolished its DEI office and also fired its diversity dean. Are critics worried that that's what's going to happen at all public colleges in Florida?
Brianna, that is certainly the concern, and that is why we saw. But Brianna, this is all part of the larger the war on woke that Governor DeSantis has been waging as he takes steps towards a presidential bid.
Certainly is. Steve, thank you for that report. Boris? Jim, here's a look at some of the other headlines that we are following this hour. Prosecutors in the U.S. Virgin Islands have subpoenaed Elon Musk for documents related to the government's lawsuit into Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring. The suit claims that bank J.P. Morgan Chase benefited financially from Epstein's operation and failed to report suspicious financial activity. Prosecutors apparently believe Musk was a high net worth individual whom Epstein may have introduced to J.P. Morgan executives. Musk tweeted, quote, "This is idiotic on so many levels." Also, American shoppers are still fueling the economy. The Department of Commerce reported retail sales actually rebounded last month following 2 months of declines. The increase was driven by sales at car dealerships, restaurants, specialty stores, and online shopping. And call it the taco wars. Fast food chain Taco Bell is going to battle over the popular phrase Taco Tuesday. The company wants to use it in branding and advertising, but can't because, did you know this, it is trademarked. The smaller rival chain Taco John's has owned the rights for the past 34 years, so Taco Bell is petitioning the U.S. Patent Office, saying that the phrase should not be exclusive and should be freely available to all who make, sell, eat, and celebrate tacos. I use that phrase, Boris, so I guess I might be in violation here.
You might be liable, Brianna. Every day is Taco Tuesday.
In just an hour, a high-stakes Oval Office meeting to raise the debt ceiling. Will the months-long game of chicken finally end, or will the U.S. keep flirting with disaster while the politics play out? We are live at the White House. 1 hour from now, President Biden will again host the 4 top members of Congress. Washington 1 week closer now to the nation's potential June 1st default date, but apparently no closer to a deal to avoid that catastrophic outcome. Speaker McCarthy is sticking to the Republican plan to tie the debt ceiling to spending cuts and to work requirements. Biden is still calling for the debt ceiling to be raised without conditions. And if you go by what the two sides have been saying in the past couple of hours, well, the forecast for this afternoon is pretty gloomy. CNN's Arlette Saenz live for us at the White House. Arlette, at some point, someone's going to have to give up something. Could we find out what those potential concessions are today?
Well, Brianna, in just about an hour, we should be getting a glimpse at where these discussions are heading. Not yet produced an agreement at this moment. There are several items on the table and still several sticking points for both sides. Some of the things being considered today as a key sticking point for both Democrats and Republicans. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
Trip coming up. He's actually set to leave for Japan tomorrow. Could anything shift there?
Well, they certainly are facing a huge time constraint. So it's a very key priority as top issues like Russia and Ukraine and China are all expected to be discussed at that G7 summit. The White House has said the president can be president from any.
All right, Arlette Saenz at the White House. Thank you. Jim, on Capitol Hill, a vote to force people on the record on the expulsion of New York Congressman George Santos not expected to pass. This is really a message vote. Let's get to CNN chief congressional correspondent Manu Raju, who is live for us.
We'll see when it happens, but with the way the nature of this is proposed, they can't block the resolution from coming up. There'll actually have to be a vote, a procedural vote, or a vote on its merits. We'll see how it shakes out in the days ahead.
Okay, so can you explain this to us a little bit, Manu? If, let's say, entirely possible that you have more than 4 Republicans who are not going to stick their neck out for George Santos, but I would say not enough, obviously, to help Democrats expel him, then how do you sort of clear this off the House floor? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question because let's just say that plays out, that there are not enough Republicans of Congress anymore. Santos did not respond to those questions and walked into the Capitol.
Yeah, look, if it weren't for that slim majority, I don't think the speaker would be standing necessarily behind George Santos. But with that slim majority comes this tricky situation as well. Manu Raju, live for us on the Hill with this breaking news. Thank you. Jim? A man who defied the odds for decades may have cracked the gene code. Dr. Sanjay Gupta will be joining us next to explain. Stay with us. A major clue in understanding Alzheimer's disease. Scientists say rare gene change could help protect people at risk for this type of dementia. These are findings that were published in a new study, and it documents a man diagnosed with the disease who seemed fated to develop early memory loss, but he kept normal function for decades longer than he should have. With us now is CNN chief medical correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta. This, Sanjay, is fascinating. Walk us through what researchers discovered here.
It really is a pretty fascinating story, down in Colombia. And that's why, researchers are so interested in this.
Yeah, it is fascinating that they look at his brain and they actually see in some ways that of an Alzheimer patient, except he has this anomaly. Another interesting thing is that his sister, right, shared this same protective gene change. It did help her, but it didn't help her as much because her family says she began experiencing cognitive decline earlier, right, in her late 50s. So what is the takeaway there?
This is, again, all of this is super interesting. I mean, women, we know, are designed to clear amyloid plaque away. And as you noticed in the study, and I did as well, these patients who had, who were cognitively doing well had a lot of plaque in their brain still. So getting rid of the plaque may not really
potentially groundbreaking, and it's so interesting. Sanjay, thank you for taking us through it. Jim?
You got it.
Timeline. And once he does, if he does get into the race, he's going to be in quite a unique situation. He's going to be squaring off against his former boss, Donald Trump, and he will have an uphill battle. Right now, we have DeSantis and Trump really taking up all of the oxygen. DeSantis knows that. One of the people who has been tapped to lead this super PAC is actually Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's former political campaign manager. And
today, as Ukraine's military claims major gains to the north and south of Bakhmut, we're getting new video that shows intense fighting inside of the city. Here it is.
They've moved their systems around the country, depending on where the biggest threat is to troops and what their military operations are going to be. I don't think we're going to learn from the Ukrainians what their next move is if this equipment needs to be repaired. But the systems that they've got in place around the capital until now have only been getting better.
And Nick, the head of the pro-Russian Wagner paramilitary group is claiming that a U.S. citizen was killed while fighting in Bakhmut. What more can you tell us about that?
Fighters who've come in to support the Ukrainians have in fact gone to fight, and some have been killed there before. So Prigozhin may have indeed the body of an American citizen, but it isn't clear at the moment. He has said, however, he will treat this man with respect and return him to U.S. officials.
All right, Nick Robertson live for us in eastern Ukraine. Thank you for the very latest on this war. Jim, some of the world's most advanced artificial intelligence products under oath. For the very first time, senators held a hearing about the rapidly growing technology and the fears that it could soon undermine our national security, job security, and also elections. That was Sam Altman. He is the CEO of OpenAI, the parent company of ChatGPT, which you've probably heard of. It can automatically generate text about pretty much anything that you ask it to. Our next guest said this about the moment that we are finding ourselves in when it comes to AI. All right, that was podcast host Kara Swisher actually talking about social media and the internet. And Kara, we're listening right now. So be the bummer on AI.
Oh. I think Sam did a good job being the bummer. I think you can't say he hasn't warned people or he isn't doing it. I think he's doing it. You know, that was going to also give a lot of bad players the chance to really take advantage of people and shift people's opinions with a lot of false information. There's things like, I mean, the worst thing, you know, killer robots. I think that's what Jeffrey Hinton talked about, who had just recently left Google, that these could be self-learning robots that are soldiers, essentially. And so there's anything in your imagination that could happen with this.
Killer robots. I mean, we think of some movies, right,
Yeah.
that we've seen almost as the reference point here, but it's no joke. Mm-hmm. Are there worst case scenarios that you think we can't even imagine?
It'd be very convincing. And it's like Photoshop on steroids. It's like the internet on steroids. It's like Facebook on steroids. And that's how you have to think about it.
Yeah, we heard Senator Blumenthal today, as you mentioned, and then it turned out that wasn't even Senator Blumenthal. So you could see how it would certainly be misused. We're hearing these AI companies, we're hearing Sam Altman, he's got these warnings out there, and these AI companies, these folks, they're endorsing this concept of regulation right now. But do you think that ultimately they'll go the way of social media giants and resist it?
I don't think so. I think they're not protected by Section 230, who's the head of the FTC. They're trying to use current laws, but it's not enough. And so we have to think about where it's going and maybe even contemplate a new department that looks at these digital issues much more strongly, staffed with experts, and see what we can do from there. It's not the worst idea in the world. I know Sam raised it today.
Yeah, we'll see what Congress comes up with. I wonder if you think they're equipped to deal with it. Obviously, Chuck Schumer, we've learned, he talked to so many AI experts to try to figure out legislation, but can Congress do this? Are they equipped?
Well, Congress passes laws on all kinds of senators. Senator Bennett from Colorado, Senator Klobuchar. There's all kinds of people who really do know what they're talking about and are capable of making the legislation. And then you hire people just like that regulate. I mean, there's people in the FDA, there's people in the SEC. And again, not perfect, but they're there to protect consumers. And that should be, of course, the first order of business is protecting Americans of the possibilities, just like they do on other things.
That is especially encouraging to hear that coming from you. Kara Swisher, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Jim, the doctor is not in. In fact, there is no doctor, and that is a real problem right now across the country. New data showing the U.S. is facing an ongoing shortage of healthcare workers, and now some lawmakers are sounding the alarm on this. We have CNN health reporter Jacqueline Howard joining us now. So, Jacqueline, I know you recently sat down with Senator Bernie Sanders on this issue. What were his concerns?
Yeah, Brianna, Senator Sanders, to lack of diversity, then that can help reduce health disparities that we see across communities, Brianna.
Yeah, we see those health disparities in outcomes, in the mortality rate of mothers, and how pain is treated. It goes on and on and on. We've talked about it here. Jacqueline Howard, thank you for that. Jim?
Driving bust. Police in Springfield, Colorado say they pulled over a driver for speeding on Saturday night, and the officer watched the man switch seats with his dog, putting the pup behind the wheel. Police say the suspect claimed that he was not the one driving, and then he tried to run off. He made it about 20 yards. The cops were able to retrieve him. They arrested him on suspicion of DUI. Apparently the dog had had a rough night, and he was let off.
So wait, the guy ran off, the dog did not. The dog sort of dutifully stayed there.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
I got to do the best for my owner.
That is body cam video that I would love to watch.
I would too. Well, you know why the dog was sober?
Why, Brianna?
Because he couldn't hold his liquor.
Oh my God.
I wish we had drums on set so
She
we
was
could have
so
a cymbal
excited for
crash.
that show.
I prepared that
Actually,
pun.
I will say
was
that's
good.
pretty good. It was good.
pretty good,
I'm gonna
yeah.
give you that's really, you know.
They have to laugh at me. They work with me.
It was a thinker. We should also point out the dog in that photo
It's
is
not-
just
Not
a
the dog.
random
I mean, can you
chihuahua on the
imagine
wheel.
this chihuahua if someone said that
By the way,
was
that
driving
dog's
their car?
lawyers have reached out to CNN to.
Cease and desist. We shall. That's it for us. The Lead with Jake Tapper starts right now.